here I am in the Philippines, in Sabang, and I've been here for, well, actually been here for almost 2 weeks, but been training with my teacher here, Mike Garner, in the beautiful area on sort of like a mountain range overlooking the ocean. And actually, this is part of his training compound. You've seen, or you might see some of this in some of the videos that I put out there of some of the training we've done. And you can see the tires behind me, and actually the camera's mounted on some tires as well. So he's got quite a training compound here, and I thought, since I'm here, I might as well talk to Mike about his training and his history of training in martial arts, because it's quite extensive. And I know a lot of the people out there that listen and watch my videos like to hear of some of the histories of people I've trained with and work with in the martial arts. So Mike, thanks again for having me as a student. I really appreciate it. And maybe we can just start with what influenced you getting into the martial arts.
The classic old story, bullying at school.
Yeah.
I cannot remember a day at school when I wasn't bullied.
Yeah.
And my first introduction to martial arts was when I was about 12 or 13 years old. My gym teacher probably felt sorry for me, and he gave me a book. He didn't give it me, he lent me a book on jiu-jitsu. He said, "Go and read this." So I took it home, read it, reread it, reread it. A lot of the stuff was kind of, when I think back, not very practical, but one thing that stuck in my mind was a shoulder throw. And I remember vividly one day this bully called, well, we better not name any names, but this bully who was my nemesis, he was picking on me and he got hold of me around the neck, and I just instinctively remembered the shoulder throw from the book, and it wasn't a very good shoulder throw, but I threw him to the ground and I lost my balance, and I fell on top of him, and I think my knee actually hit his stomach. It winded him, and he didn't want to know anything. He just didn't want to know anymore. And so I thought, wow, this stuff can really work.
Yeah.
But going back to that, in the book, in the same book, it also said if you get a pencil or a pen and you put it in between somebody's fingers, then grasp their hand and squeeze hard, it's extremely painful, which it is. But in reality, how is that going to work? Excuse me, Mr. Bully, could you give me your hand? Well, I just insert. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. So that was really my first introduction.
And how old would you have been at that time, Mike?
About 12 or 13.
12 or 13, which is about the same time I started. I started at 12. So, you know, Mike's gone from that, learning from books, and I know a little bit about his history, but we'll let Mike talk, and Mike, maybe move up just a little bit, Mike, because I don't know why, but we were going to do this down by the ocean, but I've done these kind of interviews by the ocean before, and the waves are so powerful that you can't hear anything, and for some reason the cicadas are out today, and they just seem to be droning on and on and on, and maybe I'm just more aware of it now, but usually they start up and then die down, and they don't go on, but that might be some of what you're hearing in the background, so we'll try to stay close so you can hear us. So Mike, after reading the book in a little bit of self-defense, where'd you go from there in martial arts?
Well, for quite a few years I did nothing. I rigged up a makeshift punch bag in my backyard, practiced punching. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just emulating what I saw boxers do on TV. And the bullying carried on, and then when I started work, well, first of all, I went to college, art college, for a couple of years. That didn't really work out. It was quite a peaceful time. Some of the teachers were a little bit verbally bullying, but not physically. Anyway, after that, my auntie got me a job as an apprentice plumber, which I really hated. And then bullying started again. From other apprentices, from the men I was working with, and I just thought enough is enough. I'd probably be about 17 at that time. And what really spurred me on was I saw a movie called Enter the Dragon with the famous Bruce Lee.
How many people have been influenced by Bruce Lee over the years in the martial arts?
Yeah, and I saw this and it blew me away, and I thought, and coincidentally, the same week, I think I saw the movie on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and on a Saturday, my stepbrother came in with a magazine called Kung Fu Monthly. It was more like a poster magazine thing. And it was really just all about Bruce Lee. It didn't really feature anybody else. And I think it ran to something like 100 issues, but it was all Bruce Lee. And I read about it. I read about the man, and learned he was only 5'7.5" I'm 5'5". He weighed only 130 pounds. And I thought, wow, if this guy can do that at his size, and although he wasn't big, he was muscular. I thought, I've got to try this. I've got to do something. And so it took me about 7 or 8 months to actually find a karate club in my district. And I found this karate club, and it was run by a guy called Alex. I can't really remember his last name now. And it was Kaikushinkai, which was a very tough style, very classical but very tough because it was semi-contact. In other words, you could kick to the head and the body full power, but no punching. But there again, a lot of classical stances. And so I did that until I became a black belt. But I was in a bar one night and just minding my own business, as you do. This guy sat next to me, had some problem. He just said to me, "I don't like you." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry about that, but what can I do about that?" Anyway, one thing led to another, and before I knew it, this guy had actually just sucker punched me. I was sat on a stool, and he got right up and just smashed me in the face. I went to the ground, and he kicked me in the head, and I was semi-conscious. Apparently, I found out afterwards that some of the bar staff and the bouncer had come in and they broke it up, etc., etc. And so that made me rethink what I was doing. I wasn't ready. I had no situational awareness. I mean, the first thing I should have done was got off the bar stool and created some space, or hit the guy first. But I didn't do that, and so I got hurt badly.
Yeah.
Now, this was a disused factory where we were training. We were training on the top floor. The second floor down, 2 Thai boxers who had just come freshly from Thailand opened a Thai boxing club. It was a mixture of Thai boxing and Taekwondo. And my friend said, "Hey, we've got to go and watch this." And so we ended up watching for the whole lesson. We missed the karate lesson, and we signed up immediately. And I went back upstairs to Alex and told him, "I'm sorry, I can't go any farther in Kaikushinkai. I've signed up with the guys below." He was pretty upset, but that's the way it is. If you want to progress, if you can't learn anything from what you're doing already, you've got to move on. So I moved on. I spent many years Thai boxing and learned that it's a whole different ball game. It's completely full contact, elbows, knees, fists, feet, almost everything. And in Thailand, in some of the unlicensed boxing matches, you're allowed to headbutt, groin kick, and I've even heard of biting. Of course, not in the stadiums in Bangkok, that would be completely illegal, but in some of the unlicensed fights, they also do what they did back in hundreds of years ago. Hundreds of years ago, they used to get bandages or something like a bandage, and then put tree resin on it, and then sprinkle it with broken glass.
Yeah.
And they started to do that a few years ago in these unlicensed fights. That will make a complete mess of you. It's not recommended. But anyway,
these are underground fights that aren't.
These are underground.
They aren't
fights,
governed. They aren't policed. It's basically, if you're still standing at the end, you win. So, but you can also get really seriously hurt there. Not something I recommend, but what Mike's talking about was the actual licensed fighting was rough enough, because in the fighting that you would do in Muay Thai, full contact, elbows and stuff like that, you're still going to get the reality of what it's like to be hit and what it's like to hit. So that's the kind of stuff, if you're going to get into any kind of contact, I'd recommend that rather than the unlicensed underground stuff, because some of those people don't walk away, and
don't
if
get
they
into
do,
that, for God's sake. Not unless you're extremely good, because you only need to get punched once in the face, and you're going to be scarred for life.
Changes your life forever.
Remember, they're using bandages covered in either resin or glue with broken glass, so one smack in the face could disfigure you for life.
So there
again.
you started up in Muay Thai, and
Yeah.
so where'd you go from there, Mike?
Well, after a few years, I opened my own club, which was basically a mixture of Muay Thai, Taekwondo, and some elements of karate. Not all the elements of Kyokushinkai were useless. Some of it was good foundation. For instance, in Thai boxing, you have what's called the push kick, where you push somebody away, which I found was a waste of energy. I don't think that there's any point pushing somebody away if you can actually make the kick a strike and hurt them. So again, I would drop certain things and incorporate certain things. So I didn't really teach push kicks. I guess if you were pinned against the ring and you could get your knee up and try and create a leverage between somebody, you might be able to push them away just enough to punch or whatever. But I just don't see any point in push kicking from a distance, wasting energy. I'd rather do a front kick. So anyway, one of my students was an ex-Israeli soldier, and I saw him one day at the beginning of the lesson when we had only a few people in, and he was practicing things that I hadn't really seen before, and I said, "What is it you're doing?" And he told me Krav Maga. Now this is back in the early 80s, before probably Krav Maga was well known in the West. And so this was the real deal. This wasn't somebody who just put it together a few moves and called it Krav Maga. He was the real deal. He trained in the Israeli army, retired, and lived in my district. And so we ended up training each other. I would train him for free in Thai boxing, and he would train me in the Krav Maga, which is basically, you can find Krav Maga techniques in almost any other martial art. It's like Bruce Lee said. You have to go through 100% of a martial art and suffer 90% of bullshit in order to sift out the 10% that's any good. So in arts like the pure Krav Maga, they've already done that. They've already sifted out what really works and taken it for the street, like finger jabs, groin kicks, neck chokes, things like that, which you already have in your standard martial arts, but you have to go through all these years and pick them out.
And this has been a philosophy of mine for a long time, and why I actually created specialty women's assault prevention courses, because getting into a martial art and learning a martial art can at times be useless when it comes to street fighting. And Krav Maga and things that I've done in the past, where it's just right to the point, no messing around, full situational awareness in the beginning, and then if that doesn't work and the person comes at you, then you have to react, and you're going to react with the most vicious. And it's not for the whimsical people, because you're going to hurt somebody or you're going to get hurt. And so that's what Mike's saying with Krav Maga, and I certainly appreciate. That's why I like Mike, because Mike's that type of a person where he's saying, you can do other things in many different arts, but for the combatives aspect of what you're looking for, you've got to be very specific, and you've got to have a certain mentality. You got to have a mentality that is combative. You got to have a mentality that has that profound inner seriousness, and then you've got to have the basic techniques that are extremely combative and effective to back it up, and that's why I resonate with Mike so much. So go ahead, Mike, continue from there.
Yeah, like Terry was saying, you can be strong, you can be fast, you can have great timing, you can be powerful, but if your mindset isn't right, it's all useless. I've trained many women who said they could never poke somebody in the eyes, could never hit somebody in the eyes with a house key, couldn't even twist somebody's groin. And so what's left? They want me to teach some throws. I said, you want me to teach you, I'm 5'5", and some of these women are 5 foot, 5'1", and they're saying to me, teach me a throw. I'm saying, you want me to teach you a throw? To throw somebody like Terry, who doesn't want to be thrown? I said, it just won't work. I said, I don't care if you're a black belt at judo. If Terry doesn't want to be thrown, the only way you're going to throw him is by complete and utter surprise. And that's very, very rare that that's going to happen. I mean, with Terry, obviously, he's a trained martial artist, so to surprise him is going to be very hard. But even your street pump, If you get a street punk as big as Terry and as heavy as Terry, and a 5-foot woman tries to throw him, it just isn't going to work. And that's the reality. I'm sorry, a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but that is the reality. There's a guy called Ryan Hoover who's got a video on YouTube that's called Quit Lying to Women. And I recommend that all women should watch this, because you'll get some martial arts where they'll teach you somebody grabs you by the hair and you do this and you do that and you put them in an arm lock. Well, no, that isn't going to work, because if some guy really wants to take a woman to the ground and hurt her or rape her, he's not just going to grab her like this. He's going to go and he's going to throw her to the ground violently, and then he's going to land on top of her, and he's probably going to punch her in the face, and she's going to be helpless. And so you've got a split second to react. If some big guy grabs a woman by the hair, he's not just going to try and lead you, he's going to throw you violently to the ground, and it's going to be over in a split second.
And for those of you that have known me for many years, you can see why I like Mike, because he's got the realistic point of view when it comes to this. But his point of view just doesn't come from theory, it comes from practical, where he's actually been in those situations. And you know, he told you of one, there's been others. I know he's bounced in bars before, and he's had to take care of people and, you know, fight his way through and make sure he could, you know, survive. So, you know, this guy's talking, he's the real deal when it comes to understanding combatives, and I think that's why it's important to pay attention to what he's saying here, because you can really pick up some nuggets. And this is why I created this WiseTalks sort of aspect of videoing martial artists for different reasons. Obviously right now we're talking combatives, and I've done some other interviews in the past that maybe have talked about other aspects of meditation or stuff like that. And we zero in on what it focuses on. And right now we're focusing in on the combatives, and that's why I appreciate, you know, where Mike's coming from, and you can learn some real golden nuggets here. So go ahead, Mike, continue on from you did the Muay Thai, and then we're
yeah.
Obviously he's got a stick in his hand now, right? So
yeah, I was getting tired of the Western lifestyle, so I decided to travel and find another country to live in that was warm, beaches.
It's warm here, by the way, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's very warm.
I'm sweating in the shade.
And one of my first stops was India, and I come across a martial art called Kalari Pat, which is an Indian form of stick fighting, and I learned that. I enjoyed it, but it's very stylized. Again, you have to cherry pick. The striking is very similar to Escrima, but you know, much more stylized and not more. It's not as direct. So I enjoyed that, but I couldn't really make a lot of use of it, and so then I ended up in the Philippines, and I trained here for a few years in the Philippines in Escrima, and then I went back to England and carried on the Escrima there, and I just had this niggling feeling that a lot of it just wasn't practical. Of course, the striking with the stick, hitting somebody with a stick, is very practical. As long as you make sure you're like any other martial art, you're covered, you're in a closed stance, boxing stance, where you can move, you know, you've got good footwork, you're protected. But the problem I had with, I guess you could call it traditional Escrima, was with the disarming and with all these, what I call patty cake drills, which are more like, you know, clicking the sticks together and then disarming, and you stood very close to somebody. Now a lot of instructors will tell you, oh, but this is only for, in reality this wouldn't last very long, but in reality it would virtually never happen, because somebody's swinging a stick at you. The only way you're going to get close to him is if you're pretty brave and you're going to try and bulldog him. You're going to try and knock him off his feet, or pin the guy against a wall. In reality, all these neat little drills just will not work in real life. And what I basically train with in combat Escrima is not to fight somebody else with a stick, but so that you can carry an extendable steel baton which collapses down to about here, that you can carry with you, and you can use it against somebody unarmed, or somebody who's got a knife, or I guess if they had a baton, yes, you could, you know, use it against them also if you know how to block, etc. But I'm not training people to go in for sparring competitions. I'm training here for reality. The quickest way to put somebody down in the street. And again, weapons have a massive advantage over somebody who's unarmed. Obviously, if you can carry a gun in your country legally, that is your first form of self-defense. You can't beat a gun. You can't stop a bullet. The only thing is, if your gun is in a holster and somebody comes running at you out of a side street, you're probably not likely to get that gun out before he either stabs you with a knife or wrestles you to the floor. So again, your weapon, whether it be a stick, a knife or a gun, is pretty useless if it's holstered. If you're going to be in an area that you think is dangerous, you need to have your extendable baton in your hand. So immediately it's deployed and you can strike as you extend. Same with a gun. If you're going to an area where you think this is pretty seedy looking area and it looks pretty dangerous, your gun's no use in a holster, whether it's in your jacket, in your pants, it's got to be in your hand ready. Otherwise your weapon's useless. It can be, if you don't believe me, watch a video with Danny Inosanto, Bruce Lee's Escrima teacher. It's called the 21-foot rule. And he showed police officers going to a disused building where Inosanto is sat at a desk and the officer has got to determine whether he's a criminal, whether he's doing any wrong. So the officer shouts at him and says, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Inosanto looks round and looks all innocent and kind of stands up. And before you know it, Inosanto's running at the officer from 21 feet and he manages to stab him. This is a rubber knife, obviously. He manages to stab him with a rubber knife before he can get his gun out. So that's really an informative video, the 21-foot rule. And this applies to almost anything. You can be, if you've got no situational awareness and you're walking past an alley, somebody grab you and pull you in, especially if you're a woman. If you're not thinking what you're doing, you're already dead. That's probably going to save your life more than a weapon or any kind of punching, but knowing what your surroundings are.
With situational awareness, you understand your whole environment, know what's in your environment in case you should require to use it, but also you can de-escalate certain things. You can, if you're close to a door, if you're a woman walking down the street and you're close to somebody's house door and you have that situational awareness where people are following, you can knock on that door and say, "Hey, listen, got a bad feeling that there's a few people here following me. Can I use your phone, or can I, come in for a second?" I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. You can step into a store. You can cross the street to see if they follow you across the street. There's things you can do before it ever gets to the point of violence, and I always recommend that. So that's what Mike's talking about here too. So Mike, how long have you been in the Philippines now for?
Oh, on and off over 30 years. When I first come here, I stayed here for maybe a few years, ran out of money, went home, did some work, come back here again a few years, and that's what it's been like until the last maybe 10 years. I've probably been here 10 years solid now without leaving.
So Mike has a nice property here on the mountain. It's not right on the mountain, but it's a little bit up. So the ocean is about 5 minutes away, and his school is called Jaguar. Jaguar Escrima?
Jaguar, yeah.
Jaguar?
Like the cat?
Yeah, so you can have a look at that on the internet at jaguar.com. Is that correct? Is that your page, or is it Jaguar?
It's hard to remember. It's a free website from,
Okay.
from Wix.
Okay.
If you just type in Jaguar Escrima in Google,
It'll come up.
Immediately.
Yeah.
And it's spelled Jaguar, Jaguar.
Yeah, and you can come and visit Mike and pay for like a week's worth of intensive training where you do like 3, sometimes 4 hours a day training, depending on how you both feel. Mike, he's full of energy, and the stuff he can do is amazing. He's a small guy, but the power he produces is really incredible. Really respect him for that. So you can come here, you can do a week, you can do 2 weeks. If you wanted to stay, he'd probably even have you for a month if you really wanted to really, get into it. Because he teaches Escrima, he teaches Krav Maga, he teaches a few things. Or you could, you can stay here, or you can stay right on the beach as well. Last little while I've been staying on the beach. After training, I go down, have a swim, play some volleyball. So I get the best of both worlds, training and the natural scenery. And there's something here in Sabang called the underwater river, underground river, And if you come here, you have to see that. I just thought it was a river underground. I had no idea what to expect, so I did it thinking, okay, I'll go see this river that's under the ground. And no, it's not just a river under the ground. It's cavernous, caves, there's bats, and there's these stalactites. I'm not sure if that's the proper word, but they come down from, they come down from the ceiling, and they're massive. They're cathedral-like. It's just, it'll blow your mind if you take a, there's these tours that you can go through them. It'll just blow your mind to see this kind of stuff. And this area is just absolutely beautiful. So on closing, Mike, is there anything that you wanted to add before we finish this up?
Just one thing. There's a difference between fighting in a gym and fighting on the street. It's really different. And the biggest difference is that if you're going to use fists, you've really got to know how to make a fist, and you've got to practice on a bag without bag gloves. Because if you don't, you're going to break your fingers, you're going to break your hand. That's the reason why boxers wear boxing gloves, not to protect the other guy's head, it's to protect the boxer's hand. So that's just one thing to remember. In a lot of martial arts now, they're trying to shy away from teaching people to punch who don't have experience with pounding bags hard, bare-fisted, because it's really easy to hurt your hand. So keep that in mind. Remember, if you bust your hand on the first punch and the guy doesn't go down, that's one hand out of action.
Yeah.
So
great point, Mike. Great point. So this has been another edition for WiseTalks. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you picked up a few golden nuggets here that maybe you can utilize in your own life and training, and some wisdom that even if you don't train martial arts, might help you on the streets take care of yourself with some of the pointers that we've discussed here. Mike, been a pleasure. Thank you so much, sir, for the training, and it's been really great, and I do look forward to doing more with you. And maybe if you just, for the last 30 seconds, Mike, if you just want to hit the tires for a little bit there and show a few things, we'll just take a little bit of that.
ready? I get asked this question the most. What use is a stick in today's modern society? You're not going to carry a stick everywhere you go, and exactly right, you're not. You're not going to carry a big stick with you everywhere you go, so what use is Escrima? That's the use of Escrima. Exactly the same principles. It's short, it can be in a pocket, in a holster. Everything you see we do with a rattan stick, you can do with this. And this is a little shorter, but it's a little bit heavier too. It's a formidable weapon. So that's the use of Escrima. If people can carry a gun weighing 6 pounds or more, you can easily carry this, no problem. It's in a pocket, holster. So that's my explanation of what use the stick is in today's modern society.
Well said.